Hello everyone, so in this lesson I'm just going to try and make sure that you guys understand the real difference between going from scientific to decimal and decimal to scientific. So here we're starting off with a scientific number because it's got times 10 to the 4. So if you were to write this as a decimal, it would be 32800. Let me explain. 3,28 times 10 to the 4. So when you times 10 to the 4, it means you are going to move the decimal place 4 places to the right. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And so in those empty spots, you would have to fill in 2 zeros. This over here is a decimal number. It's not a scientific number because it doesn't have a times 10 part at the end. So we need to know how to convert this into decimals, and we did this in a few lessons ago. So what we would do is we'd say that it's 2,4683, the comma always comes after the first number, times by 10, and now we need to see what happened to the decimal. So the decimal has moved from between the 6 and the 8, or let me do it here rather, between the 6 and 8, now it's between the 2 and the 4. So it moved 2 places to the left, and so we put a 2 over here. Remember we had that note written at the top here that when you move the decimal to the left, then it will always be a positive number over there. So here we go. Maybe you want to pause this video and see if maybe you can do this yourself. So I've given you the decimal for some of them, and then you have to find the scientific, and then sometimes I give you the scientific, and then you need to find the decimal. So here I've given you the decimal for the first one, and so in scientific you would write 3,8623 times 10. Now our decimal has moved from between the 6 and the 2 to between the 3 and the 8. So we'll say times 10 to the power of 2 because it's moved 2 decimal places. In the next one we've been given a scientific, and so what we need to look at is, it says here times 10 to the power of 4. So we'll take the original number, which is 4,824, and we will have to move the decimal up by 4 places. So it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. If there's any empty spots, you put a 0. So, and then the decimal is at the back. Now having a decimal at the back, you can ignore it, and so there is your answer. For the next one, we have 2,3. Now when there's a whole lot of zeros at the front or at the beginning, you can ignore them, and now we say times 10. Now where is the decimal for this number? Well, we can't see it, which means it's at the back, and we've put it between the 2 and the 3, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5 decimal places that we moved to the left, so this should be a positive number. Then over here we've got a 10 to the 3, so we're going to move the decimal place. Let me first write down the number. We're going to move the decimal place 3 places to the right, so it's 1, 2, 3. If there's any, and then put your decimal down there. If there's any empty spot, put a 0. And so there's the answer. But if you have a decimal at the back, then you can ignore it, and so that is your answer over there. Here's another 4. So here we've been given a decimal, and we need to turn it into scientific. So we see that there's a whole lot of zeros in the front, which we ignore, and so we're going to write it as 3,2 times 10. Scientific always says times 10. Now we have moved the decimal from here 1, 2, 3, 4 places, but we've moved it to the right, and so we're going to put a minus 4. For the next one, I'm just going to write down 2,483, and we only need to move the decimal place 2 places to the right, so that'll be 1 and 2. And so we end up with 248,3. Here's the next one. There's a few zeros in the front, so we can ignore those, and we rather write it as 6,7 times 10. Now we need to see that the decimal was here, and then it moved 1, 2, 3 places to the right, and so we put a minus 3. And then for this one over here, you can write down 3,2, and then we're going to move the decimal 4 places. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then put the decimal down there. In any empty spaces, put a 0. And then if your decimal's at the back, you can ignore it. And here's the last 4. So here we have a decimal of 86,403. In scientific, you would always have the decimal after the first number. Now we need to see how the decimal has moved. It went from here, and it moved 1 place to the left, so we'll put a times 10, and you could put a 1 if you want, but that's not necessary. Now for the next one, this is in scientific notation, so I'm just going to write down the number. Then it's times 10 to the 2, so we move the decimal place 2 places to the right, 1 and 2, so that's going to give you 196,3. This one over here, we see that there's a whole lot of zeros in the front, so we can ignore those. And so it will rather be 4,5 times 10. Now we need to see what's happened. We have moved the decimal place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places to the right. And so when you move the decimal place to the right like that, you say times 10 to the minus 5. Then here we have a scientific of 1.4 times 10 to the 4. So we'll write the number 1, 4, and then we're going to move it 4 places to the right. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. There'll be 0, 0, 0. And then you put your decimal at the back. If you have a decimal at the back, you can ignore it. And so there's your answer.